I sprint through the dimly lit corridors, my breath ragged. Microscene 1. I dash past crates filled with rations and weapons, ignoring the urgent calls from below. I race towards the outer perimeter, knowing I must reach it with these vital supplies before the next assault. I head straight to the supply room, knowing that Lieutenant Thorne will prioritize critical supplies for the perimeter defense. Microscene 2. I burst into the supply room, where Lieutenant Thorne stands by the central console. His face contorts as he glances at the screen, showing dwindling rations and ammunition levels. The alarm blares louder, a red light flashing on the supply console. I realize too late that we've run out of critical medical supplies for the injured troops at the perimeter. Microscene 3. I grab a comlink and call the base command center. I radio the command center. This is Officer Kaya. I don't this show, net Oknoido, on Brinton Night Town. We need immediate resupply of medkits and plasma rifles. Thorne's eyes narrow as he taps the console. If we don't get those supplies soon, the injured will die. Wow. The cargo ship glides through the starry expanse, its engines humming softly as it approaches the Republic cruiser. I step out of the comm room, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. How do we decide who gets what exactly? Resources are allocated by a strict protocol. Ships and supplies go first to planetary defense, then to trade routes, with the remainder divided among military operations. A new rule bites me hard as I walk past the medical bay, where emergency rations are being rationed. The cruiser's docking bays light up, and I can feel the tension crackling in the air as a dozen officers gather around. The commander are. Voice cuts through the noise. Logistics report. Again. I take a deep breath, stepping into the center of the group. Sir, we have incoming transport from Ord Mantell with critical medical supplies, I say, handing over the manifest. The commander scans it quickly. Good work, Lieutenant. But our med bay is already at full capacity. What's your suggestion for allocating them? I hesitate for a moment before speaking. Emergency rations should be distributed first according to the protocol. However, we have a number of wounded from recent skirmishes who need immediate attention. A young officer steps forward, his eyes narrowing. But Lieutenant, those wounded might not survive if they do not get the supplies now. What about them? I nod, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. When I Shemron, Winders, and Winter Canada down. They take priority, I say firmly. Why should mention it not too? Imagine I've been broken down. What earnings? I asked that show. The commander nods in agreement. And Cheryl, how did I calculate sorry? Not my mind. I stepped out my nose. The process is swift but tense as we load the medical supplies into a shuttle and send it off to the med bay. As the hatch closes behind us, I can see the anxiety on my colleagues' faces, sir. A reminder that this allocation isn't just about numbers and rules, it's about life and death. Back in the command center, I watch the screens flicker with the latest intel. The enemy is closing in, their ships forming a blockade around the cruiser. Time is running out. Who will get the next transport? And what if we cannot get through? The situation grows more dire as night falls, and I know that my decisions will determine not just the fate of this ship, but perhaps the survival of many others out there in the dark. And we will make it through tonight. Cold, open line, 50 knot, 25 words. I dash past flickering lights, dodging a falling crate. I push open the cargo bay hatch and vault into the dimly lit hold. The air is thick with sweat and fear as injured crew members lie on makeshift beds. Nature, Manitou, Elara. Lieutenant Thorne's voice cuts through the tension. We have plasma rifles left, but no medkits. Rule sentence, 50 knot, 20 words. Cargo ships are only allowed to dock if they carry a specific ratio of medical supplies to weaponry. I grip the radio, my heart pounding. The cruiser's communication officer statics back. We cannot spare any medkits, Lieutenant. The cruiser's communication officer adds, you have 1 hour to reroute essential supplies or face immediate destruction. Final sentence, 15:25 words. Will we manage to reallocate resources in time before the enemy breaks through? I leap over a broken piece of railing and race to the cargo bay. Lieutenant Thorne's voice crackles in my earpiece. We only have enough plasma rifles for half the crew. Medkits are running critically low. The rule is clear. Every cargo ship must carry an equal amount of medical supplies and military equipment. But with the enemy forming a blockade, I can't afford to comply. I grab a medkit from a shelf, my fingers moving, faster than thought. The cruiser's officer's voice cuts through the noise. You have 1 hour to reroute or face destruction. I slam the medkit into a crate and toss it onto the conveyor belt, heading for the loading bay. Lieutenant Thorne meets me there, his eyes sharp with concern. We can't lose any more time. The injured need those supplies now. I nod, my mind racing. Me too. We need to send something, anything, to the cruiser first. I grab a few extra medkits and toss them into another crate. The cruiser needs them more than the perimeter does right now. Thorne growls in frustration. I'll break out. But what about the wounded out there? They'll make it, I say, trying to sound confident. We need to buy time for the supplies to reach the cruiser. I push Thorne toward a pile of plasma rifles and point at them. Load these. We can't waste any more. It's we can't. Lieutenant Thorne hesitates but picks up his share. What if they do not make it? I wanna let that happen, I vow, my voice firm. The conveyor belt whirs to life as the crates are loaded. We just have to hope we're not too late. As the last crate is sealed and the bay doors close, a loud explosion rocks the ship. The blockade is closing in. I run back to the bridge, heart pounding. Lieutenant Thorne follows me, his expression grim. What now? We need to get these supplies out, I say, my voice steady. The cruiser's comm officer announces we have 1 hour to escape. We rush to the control panel and enter the coordinates for the cruiser. The engines rumble to life as we prepare to break through the blockade. Are you sure about this? Thorne asks, his eyes never leaving mine. We do not have a choice, I reply, my mind already calculating our chances of success. Let's get them out there. The ship shudders as it accelerates, but the blockade is closing fast. The cruiser's warning lights flash red on the screen. Only 10 minutes to go. Keep pushing, I urge Thorne. No, soon. We can't fail now. Monsieur, Mr. A sudden jolt throws us off balance. The engines are struggling. 10 minutes turns into 5. Are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? Thorne asks, his voice strained. What? I glance at him, then back at the screen. Just keep trying. I press my fingers against the control panel, willing the ship to respond. As if in answer, a burst of energy from the blockade hits us hard. The ship lurches violently, and I feel the strain on our hull. Brace for impact, Thorne says, his voice steady. The engines surge as we break through the final barrier. The cruiser's comm officer answers. Face appears on the screener, green lights blinking in relief. We made it, he says, his voice relieved. But as the last words fade out, and the ship steadies, I know there are more dangers ahead. We're under and not safe yet. Lieutenant Thorne nods, his expression grim. Are we? No, we're far from it. Then, I fling open the cargo bay door, the air thick with tension. The hum of machinery is punctuated by the distant growl of enemy engines. Thorne and I move quickly, each medkit a precious lifeline for our injured crew. But the rule bites hard as we count the crates. Every ship must carry equal medical and military supplies, but there are only 10 minutes left before destruction if we do not reroute. I glance at Thorne, his eyes equally desperate. We have to prioritize, he says grimly. He hands me a list of priorities, starting with medkits for the injured troops. I load a crate with medkits, my hands shaking as I secure it. The cruiser's comm officer voice crackles over the intercom. 10 minutes remaining. Well, we must act faster. Thorne and I race through the bay, tossing crates into the ship's hold. The plasma rifles clatter against each other, their presence a stark reminder of our imminent danger. As we work, I notice a crate labeled Essential Supplies R, anomaly in this high-stakes scenario. Curiosity gives way to urgency as I hesitate, then grab it and toss it into the hold with the medkits. A sudden jolt makes the floor tremble under my feet. The cruiser lurches violently as enemy ships fire their blasters, scoring hits on the hull. They're breaking through. My boat's sailed to, and went out by Darrow. Thorne shouts over the noise. This hour down Senator head down the trail, and I'm stepping for. We have to move faster. Why soon, Rich? 90 the sheriffs. But now what? We race back to the cargo bay, the hold nearly full. A last-minute decision of, do we risk it all for the medkits or save some rifles? Time ticks down like a ticking time bomb. I was still aware. Turning to Dr. Allocation. Lying down. I want a bird. Thorne and I load one final crate of plasma rifles, our hearts pounding. The cruiser shudders violently as an enemy ship breaches the shields. We're under a hit, Thorne yells. We're under got to go, now. I dash out into the corridor, Thorne following close behind. The bridge is in chaos. Alarms blare and red warning lights flash. Our cargo ship breaks away from the cruiser, heading straight for the enemy blockade. The cruiser asks, "Come officers." Voice cuts through then. Our order taking heavy fire. Hold on. No, we're not here. Only soon. A chamber back now. And Murphy Stalker. A cargo ship plunges into the blockade, the engines strain against the relentless firepower. I cannot help but wonder if we're all to make it. Not. Will our sacrifice save lives or doom us all? I wrench open the cargo bay doors just as a blaster bolt whizzes past my head. Load those rifles. Lieutenant Thorne barks, his voice sharp and urgent. The cruiser's hull is already breached. Water licks at our boots with each second. One. I grab medkits from the essential supplies crate and toss them to Thorne. We need more time, he growls, checking the rifle count. We have 12 plasma rifles left, but 25 injured crew are waiting. Walt, the comm officer's voice crackles over the intercom. 15 minutes until impact. Dodge gunboat do not work. At an instant, of the can. But around them would do it, not the knower. And then it come back. I can make it in time. I should I don't know what action. I pause, hesitating. The rule is clear. Every ship must carry equal medical and military supplies. But now, with lives on the line, there is no choice. I rip open a crate of bandages and syringes, tossing them to Thorne as well. We need these for the injured, I say, my voice steady. The ship lurches violently under another barrage of enemy fire. We can hear the cruiser's engines straining against the blockade's shields. Thorne nods grimly and starts loading the remaining supplies. The cargo bay is chaos. We are running out of time. Why don't you not put the bed? A final jolt sends crates crashing to the floor, nearly crushing me. I scramble back, grabbing a medkit as the hull breaches again. We are going down. Thorne shouts over the noise. Get the injured. I rush to the wounded crew, my heart pounding. A medic lies on the ground, her side gushing blood. Ouch. How many do you need? I ask, ripping open the medkit. Thorne yells from the bay entrance. Where's his aerodrome? No product sila. Russian. Up entrance. We cannot are. Waste there. No around. A blaster bolt whizzes past us, searing a hole in the wall. The cargo ship shudders violently, its engines straining to break free. We have 5 minutes left, and we are already down 2 injured crew members. I kneel beside the medic, applying pressure to her wound. Anisena, rotada contraction. Hold on, I whisper, tears welling up. Nurse sterile. She nods weakly, her eyes closing as I work. Thorne races back with plasma rifles, but there are too many injured. We need more time. The cargo shippers. Engines roar, trying to break through. The cruiser oars. Hull cracks open, water flooding the corridor. Wander, going down. Mr. Man, Thorne shouts. Load the injured. I help him carry the medic to safety as the ship groans under the strain. More blaster bolts rain down, each one a reminder of our desperate situation. We have 4 minutes left. Now, the cargo ship bursts through the blockadors, defenses, water streaming from its hull. The cruiser is moments away from destruction. We made it, Thorne says, his voice hoarse with relief. But there are still 6 injured crew members, and no more time to save them all. I stare at the remaining medkits, my mind racing. What do we do now? Now, we cannot leave anyone behind, but we also cannot risk the entire ship's crew. The cruiser's engines howl as it races away from the blockade, leaving us adrift in a sea of danger. Who gets to live, and who does not? Wow, I whisper, my voice trembling with fear. Will we make it back to safety, or will the enemy catch up? Lieutenant Thorne's voice crackles over the comm, urgent and strained. Medbay at half capacity. Need your medkits now. I sprint through the corridor, my boots echoing off the metal floor. The cruiser shudders violently as we edge closer to the blockador, outer defenses. We're running out of time. The rule is clear. Every ship must carry equal supplies for military and medical needs. But now, with only 3 minutes left before impact, I cannot afford to waste a moment. I dash into the med bay, finding it already bustling with injured crew members. Medtechs are working feverishly, but there is a growing sense of panic. I grab a medkit and head back down the corridor, my heart pounding. Every medical need must be met. First, the rule demands. But how do I choose which injuries to prioritize? Time is running. Outer's delays have started to accumulate. I reach the next station and find Private Voss, his leg barely hanging on. His eyes plead with mine. Help me, he whispers, but I cannot. Not today. There are others who need me more. Neither surgeon or outhail. There are others who need me more. I move on, past the injured, towards the ship's emergency locker. It's protocol to ensure every ship has an equal share of supplies for both military and medical needs. But now that balance is shattered, the medtechs are stretched thin, and I'm running low on options. I take a deep breath, gathering what meager resources remain. Back in the corridor, I see Captain Rail struggling with another injured crew member, his face pale under the harsh lights. We need to conserve, he growls between gritted teeth. Some won't make it. The rule is clear. Every ship must carry equal supplies for military and medical needs. But now, as we approach the blockade, I realize that how impossible. We're under it, running out of everything. Absent what? I rush past rail, my mind racing. Why you didn't do it? And eventually caught. Am I buried? Who among these injured will survive? The cruiser shakes violently again, sending us all stumbling forward. I can feel the countdown to impact in my bones. My bones. In the end, I make a choice. Private Voss's leg is too severe. He will not make it. But there is another who might have a chance. Oh, I rush towards him, hoping against hope that we can save someone more. The cruiser lurches violently once more, and as I reach his side, the countdown begins its final stream. Who among us will survive this? Thorne's boots slap against the metal floor as he races past me. And I still, or the air is thick with the scent of burnt circuits and antiseptic. No! I reach Private Voss, who groans in pain. You can't save everyone, I whisper, examining his leg. He tears, a clean break, but infected. The medkit is almost empty. We need antibiotics to have any chance. Thorne returns, his face grim. Why don't I? They're boarding the cruiser, he says, his voice tight with urgency. We have less than 2 minutes. Many share I can not out there, can't see out in the say, but understand any change. I work quickly, applying pressure to Voss's wound and searching for anything that can help. The cruiser shudders again, and I know time is running out. Can you stabilize him enough? Thorne asks, his eyes scanning the locker. I shake my head. On the news soon, our tender, no down tonight home. No albatross down. Not with what we have left. He needs IV antibiotics, but there is nothing here. Much. Thorne's expression hardens. Well, we can't let him die, he says, his voice a low growl. I know, I reply, knowing that every injured must be treated equally under the rule, but equal does not mean fair when supplies are scarce. Voss starts to cough, his breathing labored. And that's in ring. Too. Thorne nods, and begins to administer what little pain relief we have. I'll do what I can, he says, his voice strained. The cruiser lurches violently as it breaks through the blockade. We both know that once the shields fall, the enemy will swarm us. The rule is clear. Every ship must carry equal supplies for military and medical needs. But now we're running short. Thorne checks Voss's pulse one last time before turning to me. We need a plan, he says, his voice filled with desperation. I nod, my mind racing. Ew. Split the remaining supplies between those most likely to survive. We cannot save everyone. The cruiser Ross, hull ripples as it takes a direct hit from an enemy laser. Thorne rushes to help another injured officer who is bleeding heavily. Thorne and I rush to help the injured officer, aware that each passing moment risks another life. Who gets food, ships, and protection are, and who does not? I ask aloud, the words hanging in the air between us. Thorne looks at me, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and resolve. We do what we have to, he says, his voice firm. The cruiser shudders violently as it takes another hit. The emergency locker is empty, and there is no time for more rules or protocols. We must act now, knowing that the consequences will be dire. Who gets food, ships, and protection are? And who does not? I ask again, my voice echoing in the corridors of the cruiser. Thorne grabs another med pack from the locker, his fingers moving in practiced motions. Voss needs this, he says, pressing the pack to the private's wound. I nod grimly, my eyes scanning the corridor for more injured. The cruiser Ross, hull trembles as it fights against the blockade ships. The The emergency lockers are nearly depleted. We can only hope the last supplies will be enough. Thorne tends to Voss's wounds as quickly as possible, but his condition remains critical. We need a medic, I say, looking around for reinforcements. A commotion erupts from the main corridor. Enemy troopers storm in their blaster bolts, ricocheting off the walls. Hold your ground, Thorne yells over the noise. He checks his watch again. Only 90 seconds now. I rush to a nearby medical station and pull out a medkit. The locker beside it is empty, and I find myself tearing open another pack, trying to extend Voss's chances of survival. This will have to do, I mutter, applying pressure as best I can. The corridor erupts in chaos. Troopers flood the space, their blaster bolts lighting up the dimly lit hallway. Thorne and I are surrounded. The rule is clear. Every ship must carry equal supplies for military and medical needs. But we're running dangerously short. Fall back! A voice barks as more troopers close in. A Republic medic rushes past us, her own medkit already at work on the nearest injured. We need to secure the medical bay, she yells over the noise. I watch as Thorne and the medic race down the corridor, leaving me alone with Voss. The cruiser Ross, hull groans under the pressure of the blockade. I can feel the impact coming. And a mista, With a deep breath, I finish applying the last bandage to Voss's leg, praying it will hold until we're clear. Violent tremors rock the cruiser as enemy ships break through our defenses. The main corridor erupts in a fiery inferno, and I see Private Voss's face contorted with pain. Hang on, I whisper, knowing there's no time for anything else. The cruiser impacts with a jarring thud, and the force of it slams me against the wall. As the ship rocks, I realize the medkit is gone, stolen by troopers in the chaos. The cruiser's systems are failing. We're trapped. I check Voss again, his breathing shallow and labored. You'll make it, I tell him, though I have no way of knowing if he will. The cruiser's power flickers and dies completely, plunging us into darkness. The final sentence lingers in the air. Will Private Voss survive the impact and the subsequent chaos? Thorne's footsteps echo as he rushes back towards you. Meshenro, I'll let him climb. We need to stabilize Voss before we're boarded, he yells over the cruiser's groaning hull. He quickly scans Private Voss, finding a compound fracture in his left leg. Set up a field splint while I get more supplies from the locker. You instruct yourself, trying to stay calm amidst the chaos. You rush to the emergency locker, finding it almost bare and realizing that each passing moment increases their number of casualties. Hastily applying a makeshift splint and bandaging Voss's wound, you realize he won't last long without proper medical attention. Thorne returns with an old medkit from the storage closet, but his hands are covered in blood. That's sorry, he says, his voice strained. The new kit got trampled. Sharon, Time is running out, and you must prioritize. You give Voss a painkiller and a clotting agent, hoping they'll keep him stable until help arrives. The cruiser shudders violently as the blockade tightens its grip. The medkit is crucial for triage. Without it, even minor injuries can turn fatal under these conditions. The rule of equal supplies means every soldier has a right to medical care, but now that supply is strained, deciding who receives medical care becomes a grim necessity. Voss's breathing is shallow and labored as you look over to him. The cruiser's systems are failing faster than expected. The breach is imminent. With only 2 minutes until impact, you know the medkit won't be enough to save everyone. What about the injured? Near the engines. They're under a critical, but far from medical support. Radical support. Thorne considers risking his position to reach them. Thorne watches Rossell's fading pulse and nods grimly. We need to prioritize. The engines are in critical condition. If they fail, we're all dead. You nod back, understanding the inevitable. Well, I said they got to better. No, don't bring on these stress. You stand and nod, saying, let's move. But the question remains, who will survive this breach, and at what cost? Lieutenant Thorne's boots clatter against the metal floor as he wrenches open the medical bay door. You get to Voss, he commands, his voice urgent. I'll hold them off. Private Voss's breaths are shallow and laboured, his eyes wide with fear. Checking Private Voss's pulse, you find it weak, but steady. We need that medkit, you say, assessing his wounds quickly. Thorne nods grimly. Nishero, staring. They're out. They took it, in the chaos. They're not down. And returned. His voice is a sharp whisper, as troopers pour into the corridor, their faces strained. The cruiser's systems are failing faster than expected. Impact is less than 2 minutes away. You frantically search for medical supplies, bandages, a hyperspray, and an almost empty medkit. How long can we hold out? You ask, glancing at Voss's bleeding leg. Not long, Thorne replies, his eyes scanning the incoming troopers. Focus on him. I know. Buy us time. I apply a tourniquet to Voss's thigh, trying to stem the flow of blood. His face contorts in pain, but he remains conscious. Just hang on, he tells himself softly. He tells himself softly. The cruiser shudders violently as another enemy ship slams into them. The walls flex and crack. The air smells metallic and bitter. Thorne falls to his knees beside a trooper, his blaster at the ready. We cannot hold much longer, he says through gritted teeth. He finishes with Voss, securing the Manard's leg with a makeshift bandage. His breathing is slow but steady now. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to move him, Thorne says suddenly, pointing to a medical cart. Ours. Stable for the moment. You wheel. Voss toward the exit as troopers close in with weapons raised. Thorne fires a few shots, but is quickly overwhelmed. He falls, his body still. Frozen in place, you're unsure of what to do next. The medkit is gone, and without it, there's nothing left to save Voss. Why? The cruiser asks. Engines groan louder. The air thick with the smell of ozone. Impact is imminent. Why direct more? Mystery. Massachusetts, all that out of bashing. Mystery permanent. Do you think they'll make it? You whisper to yourself as you push through the troopers. You whisper to yourself, unable to abandon him behind. But where will he go? No, sir. I'll go. No. You slam the medical bay door shut as the cruiser shudders violently. Impact is just seconds away. Will they survive until help arrives or in the breach? Thorne's heart pounds as he skids through corridors, avoiding blaster fire. I burst into the medbay, Private Voss's, wounds glistening with blood. The key medkit is gone. Its absence could mean the difference between life and death. Lieutenant Jax stands over Voss, his eyes grim. Mission, we can't find it, he says, his voice low and urgent. Troopers close in, their guns trained on us. I stay down. Archimo. Adamashnigo, Antlirosa, and Atlinani, abort Ketbar, after night. Whisper to Jax. A trooper approaches, his face a mix of confusion and unease. Sir, the medkit is missing, he reports. Jax says, expression hardens. I need you to find it. he orders. Now. Minutes soon. The trooper nods, retreating into the chaos. I turn back to Voss, who gasps for breath. I stay with me, I say, pressing a hand against his chest. Don't worry. The medkit is essential. Without it, Voss could bleed out. Jack steps closer, his eyes scanning the room. We need to move, he says, glancing at the encroaching troopers. Can you walk? Voss winces, but manages a nod. Right. Jax helps him to his feet, and together we start moving towards the escape pods. As we make our way through the shiphouse debris, I notice something strange. The ration lockers are empty. A task going on. Boss gasps, his voice weak. I realize too late that resources have been misallocated. Some areas of the cruiser are well stocked, while others, like this medbay, are left barren. We're running out of time, I tell him. And it's not just here. A loud explosion rocks the ship, and troopers pour in from all directions. Jax pulls Voss towards an escape pod. But we're surrounded. Get to the pod, Jax shouts, pushing me forward. I climb into the pod as Jax draws fire, trying to buy us more time. The door seals just as another wave of troopers bursts through the hatch. Jax! The pod latches shut, and we jolt away from the exploding cruiser. As I watch through the view screen, I see Jax being dragged down by the force of the explosion. Did you get him? A voice asked over the comlink. I cannot answer. The pod's shields flicker, and we're under hit by debris. Jax, I whisper, my heart pounding in my chest. The pod lurches towards an unknown fate, leaving me to wonder if Jax survived or perished in that explosion. Was he able to escape? Mission, as an croaking cyclone. Cold open line, 15R, 25 words. Lieutenant Thorne's hand hovers over the escape pod, controls as Private Voss shivers in his arms. Thorne cradles, Voss his heart pounding. Stay with me, he whispers, pressing the pod's override button, despite the warning light flashing red. The hatch hisses open, and they're thrown into space. Rule sentence. One rule bites. In times of crisis, resources are allocated based on perceived value and potential for mission success. Thorne checks Voss's pulse, finding it weak but steady. He needs a medkit. Fast. The pod shudders as they drift away from the cruiser's wreckage. Suddenly, a shadow looms over them. Troopers emerge from the debris, rifles trained. Final sentence, 15L, 25 words. Whoever's running this knows exactly how to cut off supplies, Thorne mutters, his eyes scanning for an escape route. Lieutenant Thorne's grip on Private Voss tightened as they drifted away from the exploding cruiser. The escape pod's hull was breached, but the medkit still eluded him. In Republic and Imperial systems, resource allocation is prioritized based on perceived value to the overall mission. Troopers converged around them, weapons raised. Thorne knew he could not reach Vossar's side without being overwhelmed. He had to get the medkit from the wreckage, or they would both die. Thorne swam towards the debris field, fighting against the current. A trooper spotted him and fired a warning shot that ricocheted off the pod's hull. His heart pounded as he reached out for the fallen medkit. It was within arm's reach, but a burst of blaster fire from another trooper sent shrapnel flying. Consequence. Consequence. Thorne's hand clamped down on the medkit, but it slipped through his fingers just as a trooper kicked him away from the wreckage. He thrashed, clutching at the air as he descended into darkness. Would Voss make it to safety without the medkit? The escape pod judders through space. The cryosleep chambers hum, barely masking Voss's laboured breathing. Thorne clenches his teeth, every muscle tense as he scans for enemies. Priority. Allocations are based on perceived military value. Troopers storm into view, their blaster bolts streaking past in a blur of red and blue. Thorne dives for the medkit, his fingers closing around it, just as a trooper lunges. The impact sends them both sprawling. Voss groans, eyes flickering open. Thorne's body armor is punctured by a stray shot. Thorne grits his teeth, pressing the medkit to Voss's side. Medkit, I want it out like caution now. I'll bring it down. Well, no. Hold on, he rasps, fumbling for the supplies. The troopers close in, their breath visible in the cold vacuum. Thorne grabs the nearest tool and hurls it at one of them, momentarily distracting the attackers. But there are too many. They surround him like a pack of wolves. Thorne's heart races as he switches the medkit to his other hand, bracing for what hours to come. The trooper's leader raises a hand, signaling for silence. Thorne freezes, Voss's weak gasps echoing in his ears. Thorne, Voss whispers, "You can't." "Let me." Can Thorne save Voss without getting himself killed? Thorne's fingers brush Voss's cold cheek as troopers close in. Micro Scene 1. I pull out my medical kit, trying to steady my hands. The breach in my armor is bleeding through. I grit my teeth and begin to treat Voss. His breathing is shallow, and I know time is running out. Trooper gunfire ricochets off the walls as they clear the escape pod. Micro Scene 2. Trooper gunfire ricochets off the walls as they breach the escape pod. I look up, seeing their numbers increase. The medkit is within reach. It ons my only chance to save Voss. I cannot treat both wounds at once. One will have to wait. Will Thorne's decision cost him everything? Thorne sprinted through the dimly lit corridor, his breath ragged. He had to secure this area before Voss could bleed out. Protocol dictates priority of life, support over all other operations. He reached the medic bay and yanked open the door, nearly colliding with a trooper who rushed in after him. Thorne's eyes darted between the medkit and Voss, whose chest heaved with shallow breaths. Thorne knew failure to secure the area first would result in an immediate lockdown and potential loss of troops. Thorne grabbed the closest weapon and pressed it into the trooper's hand. "Secure the perimeter," he ordered. The trooper nodded, running off down the corridor. Voss groaned, his eyes fluttering open, just as Thorne began to apply pressure to his wound. "What happened?" Voss gasped. "Stolen supplies," Thorne said tersely, his hands moving deftly over the medkit. "They're closing in. Thorne's fingers stilled as he realized that Voss had a more serious injury, one he could not treat with just this kit. His decision would be crucial. Save himself or save Voss. Without proper medical supplies, Voss will die. "Focus on the left wound," Thorne said, ignoring his own pain. "I'll need to find better help." Now need to find better help. Voss's eyes widened in understanding as he felt the pressure easing from his chest. "You can tar. I have to." Thorne pressed the medkit against Voss's side, trying to staunch the bleeding. "Troops are on their way. Hold on." Thorne stepped back and dashed out of the room, ignoring the trooper who called after him. He needed supplies, and he needed them fast. Failure in securing the area will lead to a full-scale engagement. Thorne burst into another supply closet, his heart pounding as he rifled through shelves for anything that could help. His hand closed around a large medkit, but it was missing several critical components. He would need to find more or risk losing Voss. Without immediate medical intervention, Voss will not survive. Abuja had mind the intention, Voss will not survive. He darted out of the supply closet and into another corridor, his mind racing. Where were they on the map? And we don't know what soon. Urgently. How long until backup arrived? Thorne's feet carried him down the hall, every step echoing with urgency. He needed to find a way to get both of them to safety. Time was running out, and every second counted. He rounded a corner and skidded to a stop as he saw the troopers closing in. "Boss," Thorne shouted, pointing towards an escape hatch. "Get to it!" Voss managed a weak nod before clutching his side. Thorne grabbed another medkit and tossed it to Voss. "I'll hold them off," he said. "Manishter, Mintakrindanato. Mancham, Mantaftugar, Maniendo, Manos." Thorne took cover behind a large crate as troopers advanced. He could hear their boots clattering against the floor, each step a reminder of the ticking clock. Our failure to secure this area means certain death for both. I assume. A shot rang out, and Thorne flinched, wincing as pain spread through his shoulder. He returned fire, but it was only delaying the inevitable. "Thorne, I know, and this stand out out. I don't see how to take that out." "Vossa," voice echoed from above. "Well, you get out now." Thorne looked up, just in time to see a trooper leap for him. He ducked and fired again, then bolted towards the hatch as more troops entered the room. What, if securing this area means sacrificing one of us? He climbed into the cramped space, Voss closed behind. The door sealed shut with a hiss, cutting them off from the outside. Thorne turned to find Vossars, eyes wide in fear and determination. "Stay alive," Thorne said, his voice barely above a whisper. Voss nodded, then pressed his ear against the metal, listening for any sign of movement. "You too." Thorne's breath came in shallow gasps as he pressed the medkit against Voss's side. The Imperial troopers had closed the gap, their boots thudding ominously outside. Voss's team secured their position, knowing it was crucial to follow protocol. Voss's eyes flickered with pain but held steady on Thorne. "We should get this to the medic," he wheezed. Thorne nodded grimly, his hand tightening around the medkit. "I know, Voss, but we need to hold them off just a bit longer." "Now, Chinko, dynamic code." Outside, troopers moved methodically, their blasters at the ready. Thorne's radio crackled to life. "Throne to bridge," report came a cold voice. "Bridge, this is Throne. We've secured the area. Medkit's on its way." He glanced at Voss. "Director, Autometer, decent. Meister, Allocation." The man was weakening fast, his eyes losing focus. A sharp blast echoed through the escape hatch, sending debris flying. Thorne's heart pounded as he shielded Voss with his body. "I wait and look down." "Stay down," he urged, though his voice wavered. Voss coughed weakly. "Arouse men, Renaissance in Bakura, I can't know it, and a garlic. Thorne, we need to." His words trailed off as he slumped against the trooper's rifle. "Damn it," Thorne cursed under his breath, knowing the medkit was their only hope. He shifted Vossar's body into a more stable position, trying to keep him from bleeding out. The troopers were moving closer, and there was no sign of reinforcements. Thorne pressed the medkit against Voss's wound again, wishing for the strength to heal both. Time seemed to stretch as he fought the urge to let go, to succumb to the darkness, but Dutium, a promiser, kept him going. Awina, the troopers burst through the escape hatch, blasters firing. Nanisho, I don't know. Thorne dove behind cover, using his body to shield Voss. He could feel the heat of the blast nearby, hear the screech of metal as bullets struck their equipment. How long until help comes? Nachigo, I'll concentration in the dark. Thorne gritted his teeth and redoubled his efforts, knowing that if he lost focus now, both would die. Thorne's hands shook as he fumbled with the medkit, his vision blurring. Voss lay against him, gasping for air. Thorne gritted his teeth, knowing he had to prioritize the other soldiers over Voss. He needed to save Voss, but the protocol said otherwise. A loud crash echoed from outside, and Thorne flinched as a dozen more troopers rushed towards them. The hatch was their only escape route, but it was heavily guarded. Thorne ripped open the medkitar's pouch, his fingers moving with deliberate speed. He had to prioritize Voss. He couldn't afford to wait for help. Using the last of his strength, Thorne injected a vial into Voss's arm, instantly feeling his friend's body tense and relax. Troopers barged inside, their blasters aimed at them. "I'll do no action, I'll do this, sir, me." And Thorne braced himself, knowing they were running out of time. He glanced down at Voss. The medkitar's work was done for now. "And now, stay with me," Thorne whispered. "Yo, get us out." A trooper stepped closer, his weapon steady and cold. Thorne's eyes darted around desperately, spotting a small lever on the wall. It was their only chance to escape. "Wow, I'm pushing that one. My own to down there." Thorne yanked the lever, just as the trooper raised his blaster. The hatch slowly began to open, creaking loudly in the tense silence. "Go! Go!" Thorne urged Voss, but his friend's eyes were already rolling back. "When we left house already, we don't get on the king me. It's trying to that, okay, and croft in the art." The hatch opened wide enough for them to squeeze through, and Thorne dragged Voss along with him. They tumbled out into the dark corridor, troopers closing in from behind. Thorne sprinted down the hall, his heart pounding as he heard the troopers' shouts echoing after them. He needed a way to hide, but where? The walls were lined with debris and machinery, offering no cover. A sudden explosion rocked the hallway, blinding Thorne for an instant. When he recovered, he saw a collapsed section of wall, the perfect hiding spot. Thorne pulled Voss inside just as troopers burst through the corridor. "Nurturing Carter, not fucking Terry." "Thorne?" A voice called out, but it was too late. The troopers were closing in. Stay down, chow. Hurnsey, Meister, and Nerdio. With a heavy heart, Thorne activated his comlink. "Voss," he said softly, knowing this might be their last communication. "Yo, find you." The troopers' blaster fire grew louder, and Thorne could only hope they wouldn't discover Voss here. He needed to keep moving, but where? The memory of the medkit's critical component nagged at him. Protocol dictated triage. He had saved Voss, but what if that was all he could do? Thorne pressed his back against the wall, listening intently for any sign of movement. The trooper's footsteps faded into silence, and a wave of relief washed over him until he heard it, another trooper's voice in the distance. Unanswered danger lingered as Thorne wondered if Voss would survive. "How long can I hold them off?" he murmured to himself. Thorne pulled Voss closer, whispering urgently. "Our honest send went out. Now don't keep doing it. Out again. They don't doke. Can you hold on for just a bit longer?" "Art Joe." The trooper's heavy boots echoed in the dim corridor, and Thorne could see them through the small gap in the wall. Protocol dictates securing the area before administering aid. Thorne's resolve hardened with each passing second. "I'll Terry. I'm not going to cut you out. Not going to bro. I'll show the sun. You eventual." He needed to find that last component of the medkit. Anything to save Voss. A sharp intake of breath from Voss broke the silence. "Thorne, I'm losing too much blood." The medkit's critical component was a small metallic disc hidden behind a loose panel in one of the trooper's belts. Thorne's fingers trembled as he reached for it, knowing that every moment delayed could be their last. Suddenly, a trooper's flashlight beam flashed through the gap. "What is sending it into my jappy? I want Mr. Lega." Voss gasped, and Thorne felt the cold metal of his blaster against the back of his neck. "Move!" the trooper growled, shoving him forward. Thorne sprinted down the corridor. Voss clutched tightly in his arms. The troopers were closing fast. Their footsteps grew louder as they neared the end of the tunnel. Thorne's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a drum roll of impending doom. Reaching an intersection, Thorne ducked into a storage room, but it was too late. Trooper voices echoed from down the hall. Not entering, as in Oisha, nice democrate. They would find them soon. Every style committed time, touch and ray, and not sending out, cut wall, a rich identity, and winning, make a day. Desperation clawed at Thorne's throat. He had to get Voss to safety, or both their chances would be gone. With a desperate effort, Thorne shoved open a hidden panel and dropped to his knees beside Voss. He fumbled for the medkit's last component. Too late. The troopers were rounding the corner, their heavy boots thudding against the floor. Thorne pressed the disc into Vossart's wound, but it was already too late. Blood pooled around Vossart's hand as he lay still, unresponsive. Thorne's eyes filled with tears. His only regret was not finding that medkit sooner. One trooper burst through the storage room door, blaster raised. "You two are under arrest," he barked, and then fell silent, shot by another trooper who had snuck in from behind. Thorne turned to Voss, but it was too late. He clutched at his friend R's cold hand, knowing that no matter the resources or protocols, sometimes they were not enough. "I am so sorry," Thorne whispered, tears streaming down his face. The troopers began moving through the tunnel, their voices growing fainter as they rounded the corner. Thorne held Voss close, trying to remember every detail at this moment, the protocol, the medkit, and the desperate race against time. The last sound he heard was the echo of their boots fading into the distance. What would happen now? Would anyone come for him? Or were his chances of survival as slim as Voss's had been? Thorne's hand trembled as he fumbled with the metallic disc. Micro Scene 1. Thorne dove into an alcove, narrowly avoiding a trooper's boots. He pressed his back against the cold metal wall, heart pounding. Voss moaned softly behind him, blood seeping through his shirt. Troopers had been ordered to secure the area before addressing any wounded. Micro Scene 2. Thorne found the medkitan's disc in a trooper's belt pouch and quickly stowed it away. The alcove was a dead end. He needed a way out, fast. A faint light at the end of the corridor caught his eye. Vent cover half open. Initially, as Thorne approached, the vent troopers entered from another direction, their flashlights sweeping back and forth. The sound of their heavy breathing and metallic clanks made each passing second feel like an eternity. Would they make it through the vents before the troopers trapped them? Thorne crouched behind a grating, his breaths quick as he listened to troopers chattering. Voss crouched beside Thorne, tense and silent. Logistics are not always fair. The rule bit hard when Thorne saw the medkit troopers picked up and headed toward the nearest shuttle bay for repairs. Thorne's fingers fumbled with the vent cover. And soon, I'd show out and is the rocky Russia, more the down inertia than the Russian outside. He needed out on. Faster. With a hiss, he squeezed through, landing in a dim corridor. Voss followed silently, eyes darting. What now? What now? Voss whispered. Separate, Thorne said, voice low. I'll find resources. They split up, Thorne moving to a supply closet. Inside, he found crates of rations and medical supplies, but no blaster ammunition. Without weapons, we're sitting ducks. He grabbed what he could carry, stuffing it into his pack. Back in the main corridor, troopers were lining up for the shuttle. Thorne hid behind a pillar as Voss approached from the opposite direction. We need to move, Voss said, voice urgent. We'll regroup at the hangar, Thorne replied, his mind racing. He couldn't trust anyone with this much loot. Voss nodded and jogged off. Thorne moved cautiously, but troopers were everywhere. His heart pounded as he dodged around a corner and spotted an open storage bay. With a sigh of relief, he hurried inside. But the moment he stepped in, red lights flickered to life. Security breach, a voice crackled over the intercom. Malakar. Someone got in. Thorne's pack felt heavy with supplies, but his hands shook as he searched for something useful. A blaster? He found only empty holsters. A trooper appeared at the entrance, gun raised. Thorne's eyes darted to a console, pulling out wires and hoping. With a surge of adrenaline, he plugged them into the terminal, triggering a false alert. Emergency medical supplies needed in Sector 5. The trooper hesitated, then stepped back as a medic arrived. "I'll handle this, Vossar," voice said from behind. "Show." Thorne watched as Voss and the medic moved toward the entrance, fighting their way through troopers. He followed at a distance, clutching his pack tightly. "Went to some maneuver and actually when they don't open. You know I should come in, look at what fell." The battle was fierce. Medics were targets now. Thorne saw was hit by blaster fire, but make it to the shuttle bay. "Go!" "Wow!" Voss shouted as he pulled Thorne inside and pushed him toward the pilot's seat. With a final burst of energy, Thorne started the engines and took off just as troopers swarmed in. The shuttle jolted into space, leaving the base behind, but not the looming threat. The shuttle jolted into space, leaving the base behind, but not the shadows it cast. Thorne sprinted through the dimly lit corridor, Voss trailing close behind. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as they pressed themselves against the ceiling, avoiding the searchlights. In these parts, every scrap of metal counts. A trooper rounded a corner, his blaster trained on the wall. Thorne grabbed Vossar's arm and pulled him into an adjacent alcove. They held their breaths until the trooper passed. The shuttle's fuel gauge flickered ominously. They needed to get out soon. Their escape was not silent in Ufar. Troopers now knew their location. The corridor echoed with distant shouts, growing louder. Thorne checked his pack, finding a blaster pistol and 2 thermal detonators. "We need more," he whispered, eyes scanning the walls for cover. Voss's fingers trembled as he aimed the pistol at an approaching shadow. The trooper stepped into view, and Voss fired, wincing at the recoil. They huddled in silence until the coast was clear. Weapons are allocated, based on need, not privilege. Voss grunted, clutching his shoulder. "We cannot keep running like this," he panted, blood trickling down his hand. Thorne nodded grimly and pulled out a medical stim pack. He used it to patch Voss up quickly before they continued. With Voss injured, their speed decreased significantly. The shuttle's engines whined louder as they approached the hangar bay. Troopers patrolled outside, but inside was chaos. Ships were being requisitioned and torn apart for supplies. Thorne grabbed a blaster rifle from a nearby crew member, his heart pounding at the theft. They slipped into an unused hangar, using shadows to their advantage. Thorne activated the shuttle's stealth mode, hoping it would hold long enough for them to make a run for it. Starship integrity checks are mandatory before departure. The troopers outside grew bolder, and Thorne knew they had to move fast. He glanced at Voss, who was limping slightly. "Sharon, we need to get out of here," he said urgently. If caught again, their chances of survival were slim. They pushed through the hangar door, just as troopers burst inside. Shots rang out, and Thorne dived for cover behind a crate. He heard Voss cry, out in pain, before the world went dark. What would happen if they made it to their rendezvous point? Thorne pulled Voss into the shadows of a nearby maintenance bay. What center statue and the mountains do they stay? We can't stay here, he hissed, glancing at the approaching guards. The shuttle's engines whined with stress as Thorne pressed the start button. Key rule: Starship integrity checks are mandatory before departure. Voss grabbed a blaster from a nearby crate and checked it for functionality. A guard stepped closer, his light flickering across their hiding spot. Move, Thorne whispered, tugging Voss towards an air vent. They squeezed through the narrow opening, just as a guard's boot clattered over the floor. The shuttle's door slid open, and they launched themselves into space, the void stretching out before them like a cold, unforgiving expanse. Back in the hangar, troopers began to search the maintenance bays. Key consequence: the guards now know about the vent system, making future escapes more dangerous. The shuttle lurched as it reached orbit, and Thorne's heart pounded with every rumble of the engines. They were alone in the vastness, but they still had a long journey ahead, a galaxy to navigate, and a goal to achieve, securing resources for their cause. Their next move could determine everything. Won't we down? Thorne's fingers fumbled with the shuttle's controls. As Voss scanned the approaching guards, Thorne gritted his teeth, focusing on the integrity checks. You take the rear, he ordered Voss. No line will this. The shuttle has systems bleeped warnings about a loose panel. Starship integrity checks are mandatory before departure. Otherwise, critical systems can fail mid-flight. As Thorne secured the last connection, a loud hiss echoed from the engine room. Voss turned, just in time to see flames licking at the hull. We've got a leak, he shouted. Thorne's heart pounded as he hurried to seal the breach, wondering if they'd made it too close for comfort this time. Thorne pulled Voss into the shuttle as troopers shouted from outside. The engines rumbled loudly as they rushed to secure the hatches. Starship integrity checks are mandatory before departure. Otherwise, critical systems can fail mid-flight. Thorne fiddled with a spare part, his fingers moving deftly but frantically. Voss, give me that scanner, he commanded, passing her a small device from his pack. Why? Got it, Voss replied, her voice steady despite the tension. She scanned the area, her eyes darting nervously as trooper blasters flashed in the hangar's dim light. Thorne nodded quickly, then hurried to the controls, fingers flying over the console. We need a quick jump. We can't wait for the integrity check, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But if we don't pass, we risk everything. Voss stepped closer, her hand on Thorne's shoulder. Let's do this, she muttered. Thorne activated the engine diagnostics and began to patch the leak with a tool from his pack. His heart pounded as he worked, but he forced himself to focus, ignoring the growing sound of approaching boots. The shuttle shuddered slightly as he made progress, but time was running out. Thorne, while I was in power, Voss said, her voice tense. He glanced up just in time to see a trooper-on's blaster glow in the distance. Hurry. Finish soon, like that. Thorne shouted, his mind racing. He finished the repairs and hit the departure button, the engines roaring louder as they strained under the strain of the leak. The shuttle jerked violently. As it took off, the sound of pursuit echoing through the hangar. Thorne's knuckles were white on the controls as he pushed for escape, but a critical warning light flashed redat, sign that something was still amiss. Thorne, where are not clear, Voss said, her voice strained. He forced himself to remain calm, his mind scanning for any remaining issues. The shuttle lurched again, and Thorne's stomach dropped as he realized they were not going fast enough. I need more power, he shouted, reaching for the boosters. But it was too late. A blaster bolt streaked past, narrowly missing them. The shuttle screamed forward, the engines straining to maintain stability. They were out of the hangar and into open space, but Thorne could feel the tension in his muscles as they continued their desperate escape. The integrity check had failed. Natural balance. Thorne, where are we? Voss asked, her voice a mix of fear and determination. Oh, I do not know, he admitted, his mind racing. But we can't land until I can fix this. A new consequence loomed. If they could not complete the mission, their resources would dwindle further, leaving them more exposed to the Empire's reach. Voss, we have to keep moving, Thorne said, his voice firm. We need to find a safe planet and secure those supplies. As he gazed into the endless void, Thorne felt an ominous premonition about their impending destination. Thorne gritted his teeth as sparks danced across the shuttle's control panel. Voss leaned in, her eyes narrowing at the red warning lights. The integrity check has failed, and Wa'adra leaking atmosphere faster than repairs can keep up. Voss's fingers flew over the controls, trying to stabilize the systems. We need to land soon, she said, her voice tight with concern. They are be expecting us. Thorne nodded, his mind racing. They had a mission critical to the Republica's survival. Secure the last of the supply ships before they were overwhelmed by the Empire. If they failed, countless lives would be lost. A loud rumble echoed through the shuttle as Voss managed to shut down the most dangerous systems. The lights flickered, and Thorne's hands trembled as he readjusted his grip on the comlink. Contact Alpha Base, he said firmly. Wait en route with emergency supplies. The comlink crackled to life. A familiar voice responded. Alpha Base here. Status? Winding up critical systems failing, Thorne replied grimly. Landing as soon as possible. Understood. Stand by for rearming. Rearming meant they could defend themselves against any patrols, but it also meant drawing more attention from the Empire. The shuttle shuddered violently as Voss attempted to land on a small makeshift runway hidden within a forest clearing. Trees scraped against the hull, and Thorne clung to his seat, praying for stability. They touched down with a jolt that sent them both sprawling. Voss scrambled to open the door, her heart pounding. We did it, she said breathlessly, helping Thorne up. But as they stepped out into the cool night air, a shadowy figure emerged from the underbrush. Tall, gaunt man in tattered robes, his eyes glowing with malice. You should not be here, he growled, his voice low and menacing. This place is ours. Thorne's breath caught. He knew who this was, Commander Malakar, a notorious Imperial sympathizer who had been tracking them for weeks. What? Malakar sneered. What's your growling? Manshare, Nashtra Cabernical, Nanigal, America Malakar. Give me the supplies, or face the consequences. A new threat loomed as Thorne realized they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Would they be able to protect their mission and themselves from this unexpected enemy? Or what? Thorne replied, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. Thorne's breath came in short gasps as he piloted the shuttle with his remaining strength. Voss was clutching an emergency medical kit, both of them aware their chances were dwindling. Systems failing. Thorne muttered, checking the readouts again. We need that supply ship. Before it's too late. A loud crack echoed through the shuttle, and Voss flinched as a part fell off the engine. Thorne, we're going down. Cannot jettison anything else. Thorne's voice was strained but firm. This is our best shot. They emerged from the hangar into the bright sunlight of Malakar's forest clearing, where the supply ship stood alone amidst the trees. Voss took a deep breath and stepped out. Thorne, he said, his eyes steady. If we don't get that ship out, we're in deep trouble. In deep trouble. Thorne nodded, trying to mask his growing concern. Malakar will find us. The shuttle's door creaked open, and Malakar emerged from the shadows. His presence was a stark reminder of their vulnerability. Hand over the key, he demanded, his eyes cold. Or you'll face my forces. And I don't know that I'm ready. I'll tell. Then good morning, Captain. I'll quit that. Run down. Thorne exchanged a glance with Voss. They had no choice but to comply, if they wanted any chance at survival. Voss handed over the key, and Thorne watched as Malakar unlocked the ship's cargo bay. Inside were crates of essential supplies, food, medical kits, and fuel, but just as they began loading, a patrol of Imperial ships appeared on the horizon. Mind your region. Shields up, Voss instructed, pressing buttons rapidly. Malakar laughed softly, his grip tightening around the key. You think that will save you? The shuttle's shields flickered but held. They were running out of time and options. Options. Thorne knew they had made a grave mistake. Their supply ship was now a target for Imperial forces, and their chances of escape were rapidly diminishing. Thorne's hand tightens around Voss's shoulder as they approach the supply ship. The air is thick with tension as Thorne and Voss step closer to the supply ship. The last functional integrity check light flickers weakly, casting an eerie glow over the metal hull. If we can't secure this ship, our mission fails, and the Republic loses critical supplies. Commander Malakar. Stormtroopers emerge from the trees, their blaster bolts carving through the night air. Voss steps forward, a determined look in his eyes as he reaches for his blaster. But Thorne holds him back with a firm grip. We can't let them take it, Thorne whispers, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. But we might not have a choice. Ni starting, Kachsete, Anweshed, Marturna, Anwachan, Alakotino, Aneshtel. Thorne's fingers fly over the control panel, his breath misting in the cold air. Thorne and Voss crouch behind a tree trunk, their eyes locked on the approaching stormtroopers. The ship's systems are failing. The integrity check is red. In times of crisis, every resource must be accounted for or risk being lost entirely. Voss steps forward, his hand reaching for the communicator to call in backup, but Thorne pulls him back with a firm grip. Not yet, he whispers, eyeing Malakar's growing force. The patrol is closing in. There is no time to lose. As Voss hesitates, Thorne's heart races up. What if they're too late? Thorne and Voss crouch behind a tree, their breaths heavy as stormtroopers loom closer. The integrity check's red light blinks ominously in Thorne's HUD. When Malakar's forces are relentless. Voss steps forward, his hand on the supply ship's hatch, but Thorne grabs him by the arm. Not now, he whispers urgently. We do not have the backup yet. I do so, and I step around, and Bichoni Paul, and in Benny, Mitch Cho. A trooper rounds the corner, his blaster rifle at the ready. Voss glances back, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. Every moment counts. I stuck on her, but trying to watch it down in the parks. Thorne pulls out a small comlink and taps it to activate an encrypted channel. Red team. This is blue. Status? Static crackles through the link. Then a muffled voice replies. Apply. Red blue. Why are inbound but facing heavy resistance? The voice crackles through the link. Can't reach your location yet. Voss shifts restlessly, his knuckles white on the ship's handle. Thorne tightens grip, willing him to stay back. Now it's the direction program. Hang on, a no down now. It's stereo one. We can't afford a distraction. Well, the stormtrooper advances, his steps echoing in the clearing. Voss growls softly, clearly itching for a fight. Thorne looks around, scanning their surroundings for an escape route. The trees are too close out. Any movement would alert the patrol. He focuses on the hatch, the key to securing supplies. If we do not get these, we're out to lose our edge. The trooper reaches Thorne's position, his eyes narrowing as he spots them. Drop your weapon, he commands, raising his rifle. Fighting each other, Lara wets out. Thorne and Voss freeze, their hearts pounding in unison. But what is they broke? Handing copyright and pensioner, render, then rustish. The trooper's approach is a new threat, tightening the noose around them. I stout out. The judge denied. Here I can. We trust back up to arrive in time. A sharp noise interrupts the tension now. The distant engine roar growing louder. Patwa. Thorne's eyes widen with hope as the sound of a Republic speeder fills the air, its lights piercing the forest darkness. The number out here. Near Sarah. Rush is around into remarkable Kennedy Kirk. Rush steps forward again, but Thorne holds him back once more. Her knees now under intended Joe. Wait, he hisses. He hisses, watching the speeder descend into the clearing with weapons drawn. The speeder descends into the clearing, its crew emerging with weapons drawn. Thorne and Voss exchange a relieved glance as they prepare to make their move. But at what cost? Thorne signals for them to approach carefully, then leans closer to Voss. I'm ducking to Vossy. I stay. Ready on, he murmurs. Hey, murmurs. Oh, this is our last chance. We do my slim word, Burton. I finished my weapon to put it down. Non-return day rate. All the speed raw. His team moves in, their presence drawing the stormtroopers' attention away from Thorne and Voss. The tension in the air thickens as they wait for a window to open. Renter, Willow, it'd be enough. Watch the word. Commit your ground. When is your then a convection cow? Thorne's fingers tighten on his comlink, his mind racing with possibilities. The integrity check's failure still looms, its urgency pressing down on him like a heavy weight. Every decision now could mean life or death for their mission and the countless lives relying on them. Thorne crouched behind the tree, his breath visible in the cold air. Voss was beside him, his face set with determination. The stormtrooper's footsteps echoed through the forest, and Thorne's HUD flashed red. The integrity check protocol warns of imminent failure. We must act quickly, or risk the now. No protection. Thorne signaled to Voss, who nodded and moved closer. They waited until the troopers were within range, then sprang out, drawing blasters. The stormtroopers turned, their eyes narrowing in suspicion. Thorne's blaster crackled to life, its beams slicing through the shadows. Voss returned fire, but a trooper's blaster crackled to life, hitting Voss in the shoulder. He staggered and dropped his weapon, collapsing to one knee. Thorne rushed forward, tackling the stormtrooper who had shot Voss. "Stay down!" he shouted as he secured the trooper's blaster. "Rester out!" Voss groaned, blood seeping through his tunic. Thorne's HUD now shows critical systems failing. We need to move fast. This cannot wait. He dragged Voss behind another tree and checked him for injuries. Voss's shoulder was bleeding profusely, but he was conscious, wincing in pain. "We need medkits," Thorne said urgently. "Why? They can't keep delaying us." Voss nodded weakly. "That's enduring. Our colonel, Tarita, why don't I'm gonna take still there. Tell them to come back here." I yell, hold them off. "Missionary, near jail, Manchester." Thorne didn't dart argue. He knew Vosson's worth as a distraction. He sprinted back the way they came, his heart pounding with urgency. The forest seemed to close in around him, shadows dancing as he ran. His HUD flashed again, and this time it showed an urgent message from the command center. "Red team delayed by 2 minutes." Thorne reached the clearing just as the stormtroopers began to circle. He ducked behind a large fallen tree, pulling out his comlink. "Command, we are here, He whispered into the device. Need immediate extraction and medkits. Static crackled in response. Minor, Rachel of the Brushia, Arnacone, Arnacogawena, Natrial Deadline. Thorne held his breath, hoping for a reply. Nusinchen Meisten, and Natanka reply. The troopers closed in, their blasters trained on him. A shadow moved behind one of them, and Thorne recognized Voss's silhouette. He nodded, signaling to stay hidden. Right so, like Domira Urgent, he bought a kashi, up of Nagchuni, and Dole. The trooper nearest him stepped forward, and Thorne squeezed the trigger. The stormtrooper fell, but another took his place. More than 2 minutes passed before a medical team arrived, their speed hindered by Red Teamer's delay. By the time they reached Voss, he was pale and trembling, blood pooling around him. The medic worked frantically, but Thorne's HUD showed only one critical system left online: communication. Stay with us, the medic said as she applied a tourniquet. We'll get you out of here. Thorne nodded, his mind racing. I should find out, the might birch. Why don't I have that to nail shanaway, literal? How long could they hold this position? The integrity check protocol was critical. Failure meant mission abort and exposure to enemy forces. As they were carted away, Thorne glanced back at the forest. A new urgency burned within Hema. This mission had just become more than a race against time. It was a fight for survival. Through the dense foliage, Thorne's boots splashed against mud. Patted Voss's ragged breath echoed in his helmet communicator. The integrity check protocol blipped again, warning of imminent failure. Thorne sprinted past a fallen tree, his eyes scanning for cover. He spotted a small cave on the hillside, and dove inside just as a blaster bolt whizzed overhead. The troopers were closing in. Boss, we're almost there, Thorne shouted, his voice barely audible. Over the rain, inside, Voss lay sprawled against the rock wall, eyes half closed. Thorne quickly assessed the damage. Multiple wounds, severe blood loss. He needed medkits now, and fast. The integrity checks read. Light flashed more urgently. Red team delay. Confirmed, a voice crackled in his comlink. Aye. Green team proceed with caution. Thorne knew they had to move. He grabbed Voss's arm and hoisted him up, supporting his weight as best he could. Come on, boss, he muttered, straining under the extra burden. I don't shoot, and then you're not of the Alingo stuck burden. They emerged from the cave, just as a squad of stormtroopers rounded the corner. Thorne ducked behind a large boulder, pulling Voss with him. The troopers paused, scanning their surroundings. Clear, one reported into his comlink. Al, Thorne heard Voss's labored breathing, turned to painful gasps. We need medkits now, he whispered fiercely. A trooper approached the rock face, weapon trained on them. Thorne felt a pulse of failure. No time for this distraction. Thorne forced himself to move on. Each moment, wasted, felt like a blow. The trooper pulled out a scanner and aimed it at Voss. Negative, vital signs. The trooper reported into his comlink. Request medkit. Thorne arms. Grip tightened on Voss's arm as he watched the trooper walk away, leaving a window of opportunity. But they had to act fast. He signaled Voss to stay down and pulled out a small blaster from under his cloak. I stay low, he whispered, then fired at the retreating trooper. The shot rang through the forest, startling them both, but drawing their attention. Thorne hoisted Voss over his shoulder again. Urgency, driving him forward. They sprinted towards the medkit outpost, dodging fallen branches and ducking under low-hanging vines. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as they ran. As they rounded a bend, Thorne spotted the outpost in the distance, only to see another squad of stormtroopers approaching from behind. Their path was blocked. Oh shit. He cursed under his breath, setting Voss down against a tree. I need cover. Nature, I rented an account of it, now the cover. Oh, but there was none. That's so. I kindly shown, operation, punstead accurate. The troopers closed in, weapons raised. Thorne knew they could not hold out for long. Voss, you can do this, he said, trying to stay hopeful. Just focus. The troopers were within range now. Marched down. Thorne braced himself and prepared to engage. But before he could act, Voss grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Oido ita. Voss gasped, blood pooling at the corner of his mouth. Over. The Republic, and the Bissau, our initiative, the material, of the not consents. Thorne asked. Heart pounded as he aimed his blaster and fired, taking out 2 troopers. The remaining ones returned fire, forcing them to retreat. Thorne dragged Voss behind a fallen log for cover. They were safer for no long, but the integrity check protocol was still blinking red. They had to keep moving. Oh, come on now, Thorne muttered, helping Voss up again. Outlander, almost there. But as they stumbled towards the outpost, a new trooper squad emerged from the forest, blocking their path once more. Thorne's breath caught in his throat. Shit, he whispered, his mind racing for a solution. How much longer can we keep this up? The integrity check's red light continued to blink ominously, signaling their dwindling time. Thorne dove behind a fallen tree trunk, was clinging to his back as blaster fire crackled around them. Move, Thorne whispered, his heart pounding. The integrity check protocol warned of imminent failure. They had to reach the medkit outpost now. A squad of stormtroopers emerged from the bushes, their weapons at the ready. Thorne's comlink buzzed with Red Timor's delayed arrival message. He couldn't afford any more delays. Voss needed medical attention immediately. Thorne and Voss sprang into action, sprinting forward as troopers fired blindly. Bullets whizzed past their heads, but they pushed on, adrenaline fueling their desperation. A stormtrooper squad blocked their path, weapons aimed directly at them. Thorne scanned the forest for a way around, but troopers surrounded every exit. His HUD flashed an urgent red. The integrity check protocol was about to fail completely. Thorne, what do we do? Voss gasped, his breathing labored. I cannot. Take this chance, Thorne replied, gritting his teeth. We have to go through them. Well, don't go. Mistake, unconsent, Voss nodded weakly, as Thorne prepared for a dash. Troopers shifted their attention to the incoming red team backup, providing a fleeting moment of reprieve. With Voss's weight on his back, Thorne bolted towards the troopers, drawing fire and dodging shots. The integrity check protocolas. Red light flickered erratically. Time was running out. Thorne forced himself through the hail of blaster bolts, reaching the squad just as their comlinks buzzed with Red Timor's arrival. Backup was finally on the way, but it wouldn't arrive in time to save Voss. I hung on, Thorne urged, ignoring the troopers closing in behind him. Just a little more. I share. With a final burst of speed, he pushed through the stormtrooper line and stumbled towards the medkit outpost. The integrity check, protocol's red light, finally went out as he reached the safety of the outpost. Inside, Thorne found the medical supplies they needed, but Voss's condition was critical. I need help. Thorne said to the nearest medic, who rushed forward with a medkit. But even as they worked, Thorne knew the integrity check protocol's failure meant more than just their own struggle. It signaled a broader crisis in resource allocation, one that could jeopardize countless lives and missions. Will Red Timor's delayed arrival mean the difference between life and death for Vossa? Or is this just the beginning of a much larger failure? Thorne and Voss dashed through the underbrush, leaves pelting their faces as blaster bolts scream past. Almost there, Thorne grits out, his breath ragged. The integrity check protocol's red light blinks faster, a warning that echoes in his mind. "We need those medkits now," he yells over the chaos. A squad of stormtroopers rounds a bend, their rifles trained on them. Voss's body slumps against Thorne as he stumbles to a halt, his injuries worsening with each moment. Thorne pulls out his blaster, but it's jammed. The protocol's failure is real. "Thorne," Voss wheezes, "take cover." Or in research, Thorne drops behind a thick tree trunk, using it as a shield. Well, he can't risk Vossar. The stormtroopers advance, their leader barking orders. Thorne knows they have to act fast, or both of them are dead. A sharp pain in his side draws his attention. Voss is hit again. "No, oh no," Thorne yells, trying to drag him behind cover, but Voss's body won't move. The integrity check protocol warns of critical failure. The outpost, a mere 50 meters away now. Thorne fires at the stormtroopers, managing to take down 2 before they return fire. He stumbles forward, forcing himself to continue despite the pain and exhaustion. Vossar's breaths are shallow, his eyes glazing over. The medkit outpost looms ahead, but Thorne cannot go alone. Voss, he needs help, but there's no time to call for backup. He grabs a medkit from a nearby fallen trooper and rushes inside, ignoring the protocoller's desperate blinks. Inside, he finds a stash of basic supplies, but nothing advanced. Voss's injuries are too severe. They need specialist care. Thorne's grip tightens on the medkit as he realizes their situation is far worse than anticipated. He drags Voss to a makeshift bed and starts tending his wounds, hoping against hope that it will be enough. The integrity check protocol continues its frantic blinks, a reminder of the ticking clock. "Just hold on," Thorne whispers, his voice trembling as he works. Outside, stormtroopers close in, their boots pounding on the ground. The integrity check fails completely. The outpost system's shutting down. "No. No, or it is start. No," Thorne shouts, clutching Vossar's hand. The medkit outpost is now a prison of its own failure. Who will come to their aid? "General, now I'll say no. When it's sent out,